This is Jim Channon. This is about food forests, which you once thought were gardens. Go planet. When you think of garden, I don't know what comes to your mind, but if you are among the many now who are trying to feed themselves, thinking, gosh, can I plant enough in my yard, in my local neighborhood to feed me and feed the neighbors, etc., thinking real sustainability, the paradigm shift you may have to go through when you think of garden looks something like this. Now that may sound like another one of those permaculture terms, and it is, but the trick in sustaining yourself in the modern world is not to think of a garden as being something that just runs along the ground, that you dig up, plant, harvest, replant, dig up, plant. If you can think of a forest with many, many layers, not only the ground layer, but the tubers that are below the ground, like potatoes, the things that may be just on the ground, for example, along the ground in places that have aquaculture, along the ground in beds where you may need to plant new seeds, and those beds must be very carefully nourished and controlled while the seeds have a chance to come up. And then you think of working your way up through low-level beans and potatoes and yacon and tropical fruit and coffee, and you work your way up through the citrus trees and finally to the taller like papaya and coconut that we have here in Hawaii. Getting all the way to the place behind where you have timber and firewood, and you have all these things together with perhaps animals moving around in a chicken tractor, for example, which is a way to contain chickens so that they can continue to gobble various parts of the land and then at the same time leave their fertilizer. So the concept that you think of then is that once you get the food forest going, first of all, it's perennial. It grows every year, and that's when we start getting survivable, when we have this capacity to go out every year and pick the fruit. Doesn't mean it's sometime, in the long life of a tree it won't die, fall to the ground, maybe be torched so that the ash can go back into the ground again and you begin another cycle. But in especially the Polynesian world, where they have very active food forests all around them, first thing you notice is that, by golly, you're just looking at what you thought was beautiful nature, a beautiful tropical forest. But as you proceed in with your small baskets, on your shoulder, you pick and glean what you need for the day, and as you go, you may repropagate, pick up a few seeds along the way, and in your loop, take care of all that, bringing your bounty back to the table, probably within a couple of hours every day. That's the place that we want to get to. Now, I'd like to take you out on my land and just give you some idea of some of these layers by looking at some very real kinds of food. And it's a food forest. It has edible landscaping in it. In school, they will call this an agroforest. But trust me, what it is a vertical garden. Let's go have a look. So here, let's look at the some of the plants that are along the ground. Well, gosh, right along the ground we have squash coming along through here. And in here just a little bit, by golly, there's a young papaya tree that'll be up 8 or so feet once it goes. And this is a staple starch called a yacon, which is like a potato. And it's just about to be harvested, and I'll pull that out, and it'll have, 6 or 7 tubers that'll be edible, and then 5 or 10 others that'll be replanted. So now we're looking at ground level and just above. Again, at the 1 foot level, this is Okinawan spinach. and it's got a lovely purple on the back. This is kind of a survival food. It does not take a lot to keep it going, and it doesn't taste all that great just by itself. So what you do is you mix it with the other low-growing greens, and all of a sudden with just a little flash frying and cooking, it looks great. So then transitioning, we have ginger next at this level, still at the 4-foot level. Here we are. This is called energy. Take on our island, when the oil stuff's coming, the power goes off, and we can't cook anything. So instead of taking all of our lovely trees when they get old back to the dump something, we just make firewood, and it makes, I think, a kind of a beautiful understory itself. So now we're coming up off of the lower parts, distance from the ground up, and here at, say, normal reaching level, we have greens, which are allowed to grow up. This is a tomato tree. Some of the smaller banana trees come up next at this level, and of course they go on up. So we have another example here, nasturtium along the ground. Salad material, both the leaves and the flowers are quite edible. And then notice again, even a spinach, kind of a green, another sort of mid-level plant. And then the papayas, of course, are growing right on up to the bananas. So under this tree, just because we can, more survival spinach. It's a little rough in the raw form, but just a little cooking, it's fine. And now moving on up to those that are a little taller. Here's a nice ice cream bean. These leaves are real great nitrogen fixers. They'll go back underneath all the rest of the trees. So ground level, building up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers all the way to timber at the top. This is a food forest. This is a very happy tree. This is what happens when you prepare the ground ahead of time, you know? Wow! Gosh, me and the wood rats are going to have a good year. It's a lovely little pomegranate, which will soon be about that big. And it has thorns. You know, you have to have your gloves and maybe a little device to hook the fruit and bring it down and put it in your basket. But by the way, this pomegranate makes such a lovely addition to any kind of a cold salad. So colorful and snappy. Part of the lower layers very often is the medicine plants, and that aloe over there is, of course, the barbadensis, which is the most used medical aloe on the planet. And this is a way for you to think about your garden. It's a garden that goes up, and by the way, the best thing of all is when you're finished, it doesn't look like a farm at all. It looks like paradise. How can you beat this? This is a good deal.